Hello friends, welcome to yet another session on essay perspectives. The topic for today is a self without a bookshelf is naked. Friends, as always, I have a personal request to make. My book Ethics, Integrity and Aptitude has unfortunately been pirated. Unfortunately, pirated book is of very low print and paper quality. Hence, I urge all the readers to buy original. Original copies can be bought from the seller Arvind India on Flipkart and from the seller Affordable on Amazon. Thank you. Friends, as is always, before we start the essay, we need to conceptualize the essay as being made of various components and subcomponents. So this essay can be conveniently divided into these components. So first we would introduce the topic, then we would explore the relationship between books and clothes, then we would elaborate on how does reading books helps, then we would critically analyze whether mere reading book helps. Okay, then we would conclude. Friends, as soon as I saw this topic, I was reminded of none other than Dr. BR Ambedkar. Dr. BR Ambedkar was born socially naked. Let us take a peep into the society in which Dr. BR Ambedkar was born, friends. There were broadly two communities. One is depressed classes and the second one is upper classes. See, these upper classes were born socially clad, if I may say so, but depressed classes were born socially naked. What do you mean by socially naked? These depressed classes did not have the protection of social protection of community to get themselves protected from the let us say the sunshine of discrimination or the chilling cold of humiliation. Correct. So this socially upper classes had acquired the knowledge of Vedas, Puranas, etc. So that had made them socially clad, and this depressed communities, because of their lack of lack of opportunities to learn Vedas or lack of knowledge of Vedas or whatever, for whatever reason in that societal community, they were socially naked. By socially naked means, see, they did not have the societal protection. So since when a person is physically naked, he is subjected to a lot of harsh weather, be it sunshine or chilling cold or whatever. In the social perspective, every such person is affected by humiliation, discrimination, etc. So thus it took Ambedkar to acquire enormous amount of knowledge by reading so many books and internalizing the concepts of liberty, equality, justice, constitutionalism, etc. to raise from and socially depressed classes to an intellectually upper classes. It was only his knowledge, it was only his reading of books that actually transformed him from being socially naked to being intellectually clad or even socially clad. Correct? So thus it is a pointer. The life of Ambedkar is a pointer. Everybody in that community were treated socially naked because they did not have the required knowledge, perhaps the knowledge of Vedas, Puranas, etc., so that they can raise to the level of upper classes, or perhaps the knowledge of liberty, equality, constitutionalism, justice, rule of law, so that they can voice their anguish, voice their anguish and voice their frustration and fight for their rights. Okay, in the absence of these two knowledges, so they remained socially clad. They remained socially naked. It was only Ambedkar who, with the amount of knowledge that he acquired through reading books, he internalized assimilated the concepts of liberty, equality, justice, rule of law, etc., constitutionalism, so that he did not remain socially naked, and he ensured that the entire depressed communities in this country would not continue to remain socially naked. Correct, friends? So now let us try to dissect this concept, decipher this concept, or decipher this topic at conceptual level. Basically, there are three keywords. One is self, second is bookshelf, third one is naked. Friends, a self means a self can be an individual, it can be an organization, can be a society, or can be even a country. It can mean anything. Okay, it is basically a representative term that is being used here. Then what is bookshelf signify? Bookshelf actually signifies acquisition of knowledge or acquisition of skills, and also acquisition of practical sense of world. These are bookshelf actually signifies these things. Then let us come to the third word, being naked. So being naked means being naive, being gullible, and being complacent. So thus by putting all these words together, self, bookshelf and naked, or by putting all the meanings of these three words together, I can deconstruct the essence of this statement as an individual who does not indulge himself in the acquisition of knowledge or skills or practical or acquiring the practical sense of world would continue to remain naive, gullible, at times complacent also. In to stretch the same thing for organizations and other entities, an organization, society, or a country that is consisting of individuals who don't indulge in the acquisition of knowledge, skills, or practical sense of world through reading would such societies or such organizations or such countries would continue to be naive, gullible, or even complacent. Got it, friends? So this is how we have to deconstruct the topic. Once we have set the tone, then we can start the essay on a confident note. Friends, this essay statement essentially tries to link between books and clothes. Correct? That is the only two things. So we have to now compare how these two things are related, or how these two things reflect the same meanings. First, physical versus intellectual personality. Friends, as clothes are for a physical personality, so are books for an intellectual personality. Correct? So a person who wears clothes appropriately is respected, is called civilized. Similarly, a person who reads lot of books is respected, and at the same time he is called civilized. Correct? Then both give you the confidence. Imagine a person without clothes. A naked person, do you think a naked person is confident enough? No, right? Or need not be naked. Even an inappropriately dressed person also would not be as confident as a person who is appropriately dressed. Correct? Let us take an example of let us say you are being invited as delegate to a seminar or a conference. Let us say every other delegate has come very properly dressed with suit, trousers, necktie, everything, lapel pins, everything. But you have gone in a plain formal wear. See, in that august audience of in that august group of delegates who are everyone who is well dressed with suits, etc., you are the only one with a plain shirt and a trouser. Don't you feel underconfident? It quite naturally it happens. So an appropriately clad person is more confident than an inappropriately clad person. Correct? So similarly, books. A person who keeps reading, a person who keeps updating himself, a person who learns new skills through reading is definitely more confident than a person who does not take up reading continuously. Correct? It is only see friends, even in UPSC examination, a person who has read well, who has understood well, is more confident in writing answers than the person who has not read well. It is as simple as that. It is a book, a reading gives you confidence. So if clothes give confidence to your physical personality, books give you confidence for your intellectual personality. Both mask one's lacuna. Correct, friends? Clothes are used to mask the shortcomings of your physical stature. Correct? So let us say a person who has some dark patches on his hand would prefer to wear always a full sleeve shirt. Correct? So similarly, a person who is dwarfer perhaps would prefer to put on shoes with higher soles. So thus it is the appropriate, the dressing can be used to mask one's physical lacuna. Similarly, reading can be used to mask one's intellectual lacuna. Correct? A person who perhaps is not very much well versed with table manners would start reading a book on table manners or start watching videos on YouTube on table manners to acquire knowledge, so that his shortcomings, his lack of understanding on that subject get masked. Correct? And both signify one's tastes and interests. Isn't it, friends? See, we are what we wear. So many times I think so. We are what we wear. A person who believes in flaunting his wealth perhaps would start putting on luxurious clothing, perhaps silk. He would start putting gold jewelry, ornaments, etc., etc. He or she would try to present himself or herself as being very rich. On the contrary, a person who believes in simple way of life, despite being rich, perhaps would prefer to wear simple clothes. Who can be a better example than Gandhiji himself, friends, who remained half clad throughout his life, who put on only khadi. So though a barrister, a rich barrister with a lucrative practice in South Africa, coming back to India and finally realizing that attire doesn't matter, so finally he gives up on all those flashy, fancy, flaunting attire to put on self-woven khadi. Correct? So that is his taste. That actually reflects Gandhiji's belief in simple way of living. That actually reflects Gandhiji's belief in Swadeshi. Correct? So thus what we wear signify our tastes. So is book. Don't you think, friends? A person who is very much interested in cooking would keep on reading culinary books. A person who is interested in keeping himself fit would keep reading on physical fitness. A person who is interested in, let us say, business would keep reading about business strategies and business acumen and the biographies of great entrepreneurs. So thus both signify one's taste and interest. Then both send signals about us. As already told you before, it is what we wear would send a signal about us. If we wear, let us say, silk dresses, it sends signals that we are very rich. May or may not be true, but still, that's how it is perceived. Same is the case with books. Once you start talking, if you start referring to, often referring to the anecdotes from Mahabharata, Ramayana, Jataka tales, whatnot, then you would be, it would send a signal that you are purely a religious person. Correct? So, Thus it is both send signals about the individuals. After drawing similarities between books and clothes, if we have to explore the interdependencies between fashion and the book, I personally feel books can influence fashion, but it cannot be other way around. So what do I mean by this? Let us say you start reading about more and more climate change, you start reading about more and more environmental conservation, etc., etc., then perhaps you would end up preferring sustainable fashion, organic fashion. Correct? These are the new terms that are doing round in fashion industry. Correct? So some brands claim that they are creating apparel from ecologically sustainable material, okay, and also recyclable material, etc., etc. So similarly, if you start reading more and more about vegetarianism, veganism, then perhaps you would start embracing vegan fashion. Correct? So I mean, vegan fashion is mostly those clothes that are apparel made out of materials that are sourced from non-animal sources. Correct? So thus it is mostly one's thinking would lead to one's attire. So I mean, there is we can give ample examples, friends. A person who starts reading more about spirituality would start wearing white clothes. I mean, what not? I mean, there are a number of examples. But so thus it is amply clear that so many times books can influence fashion. But can fashion influence books? Of course, not directly, so that's why I'm saying it may not be other way around. But very very rarely, even this fashion also would influence books also. I mean, perhaps it's a very rarity, because the influence of fashion on fiction is often seen. How a novelist would prefer to clad his or her protagonist in a particular way when the protagonist is underconfident. Then with the transformation, then the transformation in the protagonist can be projected through the change in the fashion. So like that, sometimes even fashion can influence books, but it's a very rarely, it's not very it is not as direct as books influencing fashion. After harping so much on the relationship between books and clothes, I think it is important for us to pause a minute and question ourselves whether the link between books and clothes is always explicit. I don't think so. Sometimes the link between books and fashion may not be there at all. The best example is Albert Einstein, friends. By seeing the way Albert Einstein used to dress himself, many could not believe that he was a Nobel laureate physicist. All of us are aware, right? So many intellectuals don't care about how they look like. So thus, the relationship between books and clothes may not be explicit. A well-read man may also not worry about clothing. Sometimes a person who dresses appropriately at every occasion may not be well-read also. So thus, there cannot be, there are many instances where direct relationship or where explicit relationships between books and clothes can be established. After we have elaborated the essence of the topic, now it is important for us to just get into justifying the topic. How books or how having bookshelf would help a person to get intellectually clad or socially clad, whatever. So thus, actually we want to dwell upon the advantage of reading books. Why should one read the books? Why should one have a bookshelf of his own? So the first thing is acquisition of knowledge. It's as simple as that, friends. So if you read books, you acquire knowledge. So more knowledge would give you more ability. more skill, more you are better placed than your competitor to win the competition. Correct? Don't you think, friends, it is only your. Let us take the example of Sunil Handa and Venkat Krishnan, friends. So you must be, this I have read from the book Stay Hungry, Stay Foolish, where this Sunil Handa and Venkat Krishnan, both stalwarts, they set up something called, they were in the process of setting up Ekalavya Model School in Ahmedabad. See, while doing so, you would not believe, friends, they must have read about 1,000 books. That is what they claim, 1,000 books. They wanted to understand. The books ranged from pedagogy, child psychology, schooling, school management, etc., whatnot. You know why they did it? Because they wanted to have something called immersion experience. See, to quote from the book itself, they say that in India, an architect who designs a mall would the next day design a school without having any clue about education environment. So thus he would not he would set urinals at such height that a student had to literally stand on his toes to pass urine, and or the steps would be so high for any student to climb the stairs. So all these intricate details they wanted to understand, and they wanted to have an immersion experience, so before launching the school themselves. So this amount of knowledge is just amazing. Okay, so reading about 1,000 books before setting up an education institution is not a joke, right? See, they were a small team. They used to read about 3-4 books a week each, and they kept on reading. They understood everything, and then they set up one of the best schools in the country. Then to take the same example from the same book, actually, a similar example from the same book, Stay Angry, Stay Foolish. This is about only Sunil Handa sir. Sunil Handa sir was actually doing graduation in BITS Pilani. At that time, during summer vacation, he and his buddy Bharat, they stayed back at the college and they did lot of research. They read more about solar energy, and they found out something about honeycomb collectors, which had been invented by Russians way back in 1920s, I guess, but yet it had not given the results. So that reading more into the solar energy, so they picked up this idea, and in the days to come they turned into a reality. So finally their invention was recognized worldwide, and they were invited for a conference in Italy. They got a lot of job offers also because of this one invention. So what I am trying to tell you, friends, it is only that knowledge that would actually change what you are. So that is one greatest advantage that reading books can ever give. And the second thing is countering criticism. Friends, as a human being, every action of ours, every behavior of ours is subject to criticism, right? Only a well-read person can counter the criticism with confidence, with corroboration, with substantiation, with logical arguments. Correct? You can advance cogent arguments countering your criticisms if and only if you are a well-read person. Otherwise, it becomes extremely difficult. Okay, I think the best, there cannot be a better example than Dr. Ambedkar sir's magnum opus, Annihilation of the Caste. See, if you read that small book of about 80-85 pages, actually, it's a brilliant criticism of the existing social system, caste system in the country. So, this is a cogent, it's just amazing. You have to, only if you read that book, then only you will realize that what a great intellectual Dr. Ambedkar was. So, thus, he was able to counter the criticism. He was able to do that only because of his long acquisition of knowledge, right? Without reading about equality, constitutionalism, liberty, etc., Ambedkar sir would not have been in a position to counter the criticism. Correct? So that is another advantage. Then synergistic ideas. See, friends, it's always when you keep reading, so you will get some senses. Every book would give you some sense, would give you some ideas, would give you some insights actually. So later, slowly, one idea which you would have used at one, I mean, which you would which you would have understood from one book, you would apply in an altogether different scenario. So thus it would give you a lot of synergy actually. So then fighting for causes. Friends, don't you think if you have to fight for a cause, maybe that is animal welfare, maybe that is vegetarianism, maybe that is equality, maybe that is liberty, maybe that is non-violence. For you, for anybody to fight for any cause, you should have a solid understanding of the philosophical underpinnings of that cause. When will you get the solid hold over the philosophical underpinnings of any cause? You would get it only when you immerse yourself in reading about that cause. Correct? So, if you don't read, again friends, so I am actually, I am tempted to again refer to Dr. Ambedkar only. It was his only knowledge that actually ushered him into the fight against untouchability, the fight against inequality, the fight against discrimination. Correct? So, you would fight for a cause only when you are philosophically better equipped. And friends, even many extremist organizations also today would get the revolutionary literature printed, distributed. Why? Only to increase public opinion in their favor. They would actually try to put their philosophies into the minds of so many other people, so that there would be more and more advocates of their philosophy. Next, last thing is, reading books makes one modest, friends, because as you read more and more, you would start realizing that more and more needs to be read. So thus, as you keep on reading, slowly you become calm, you become modest, you start realizing that the world is so big, so huge, and you are just a speck of dust in this entire universe. So that actually makes you modest, and that actually makes you a good human being. Now we are at the most critical juncture of the essay, so which is critical analysis. Friends, as I keep telling you, our essay has to be critical. We should first justify the topic, and then just we would have to question ourselves. Correct? So now we have spoken about, we have batted for reading books. Then we have to pause a bit and question, is reading books enough? Is reading books enough? The answer is certainly not. One has to go beyond reading. See, we are aware of this term bookworm, right? See, who is a bookworm basically? Bookworm is a person who just keeps on reading. That's it. So mere reading of a book would not help you at all, friends. See, even if you observe, there are so many UPSC aspirants who keep on reading. Only reading, do you think, would help one person to clear mains and get himself figured in the final list? Certainly not. Then one has to go beyond reading. What do you mean by beyond reading? So you have to take ideas from reading, subject them to critical review, and then internalize the apt ones. So reading gives you information. Assimilating that information would turns it into knowledge. Correct? So thus it is important for us to read the information, understand and assimilate the information, and convert it into understanding and knowledge. Only if you understand, only if you convert that understanding into knowledge, then only it will help you. If you restrict yourself to acquiring information in the place of knowledge, then perhaps you would not make any significant impact anywhere. It is just waste of time. Then you would remain as a bookworm. This is one aspect. The second aspect is mere taking information and understanding and converting it into knowledge also is not enough. You have to go even one step further, and you have to subject every idea to a critical review. Whether that idea is just, whether that idea is valid, whether that idea is practicable, whether that idea is moral, whether that idea is ethical, whether that idea is workable. So all these things has to be you have to, a person, a reader has to has to subject that idea, has to see that idea in these lenses of practicability, workability, ethicality, reasonableness, validity, morality, just, etc., etc. Only when you are able to subject every idea into such a critical review and filter and extract only those ideas that are workable, practicable, moral, just, valid, then only you will become a successful person. Correct? So thus mere reading is not enough. Then second point is, you have to be a responsible reader. What do you mean by responsible reading? You have to read moral and just literature. See, in the initial point what I told you was, whatever you read, you have to first subject them to the critical review, and you have to choose only those ideas which are moral, just, etc., etc. So now what I am trying to tell you is, you should read only a responsible literature. You should read only moral literature. You should read only just literature. You should not be, you should not get carried away by reading something which is unjust. Because writing is not a amoral thing, right? Literature is not a amoral thing. Literature is not value neutral. There are literature that support discrimination. There is literature that support violence. There is literature that support extreme ideas. Correct? There is literature that actually incite violence. Correct? So there are so many literatures which you should shun away. Correct? You should be smart enough to pick and read only moral and just literature. So then, reading, you become a responsible reader when you don't get conceited. What do you mean by conceited? Superiority complex. You should not feel excessively proud of yourself that, I have read 1,000 books, I have read 100 books, I am the most knowledgeable person. There is nobody else who can question my knowledge, etc., etc. If you get into that trap of superiority complex and conceit, then that would be the end. Correct? So that's why I said reading should make you more modest rather than make you more conceited. Correct? So thus, reading books itself is not enough. One has to read to take ideas and convert them into understanding and knowledge. But in this process of converting information into knowledge and understanding, one has to apply the filter and has to take only that information which is workable, practicable, just, moral, ethical, etc., etc. Correct? Second thing is, initially, you should not randomly pick some literature which is immoral, unjust. You should pick only that literature which is moral, just, etc. And also, once you acquire more knowledge, you should become more grounded. The more you read, the more you should get grounded. After this elaborate discussion, it is time for conclusion, friends. To conclude, we can say, just as appropriate fashion would enhances one's personality, would ooze confidence in one's physical personality, so are the books which would give intellectual confidence, which would prevent us from criticism. So finally, it is important for all of us to have a separate bookshelf for ourselves. A person who does not read remains naked, because who we are is what we wear, what we are is what we read. Thank you, friends, for patient listening. So let's meet next week with another topic.